Hello and welcome to Universal Love Law. Today I wanted to come here to talk about. I'm sorry, guys. I'm all over the place. I wanted to come and talk about contrast on a metaphysical level because I've been getting. It's on my heart to talk about it. Right. It's on my heart to talk about contrast and why contrast exists. And why it is a part of the blueprint of this universe and a soul's journey and experience. Contrast is what makes this world go round. It's what makes the void a full circle, right? And it's very important to know that what contrast is in this context, right? So when we're talking about metaphysical, it's beyond these physical, right? Beyond this physical plane. So from a higher perspective. And so I'm just presenting the information through the lens of understanding based on my experiences, right? And based on my perception and the way that I'm able to relate this revelation as we are in this age of Aquarius of information and understanding paradigms without outside of the construct of the 3D limited mindset, right? So when we're thinking about universal laws and how the world operates based on a universal alchemy versus like a actual law, right? Laws of the land, things of that nature. When we're talking about the laws of the universe, the alchemy that goes into that, we know mathematically that everything starts from a void, a starting point, right? So the starting point is where we begin our journey in contrast. So wherever you are, you always experience the opposite to that. We hear that a lot in the realm of manifestation, and we're talking about what's Abraham Hicks and all of those people, right? All of those manifestos. We learn a lot about how there's a point of reference in which you kind of eject or kind of project out whatever energy, thoughts, desires, feelings, emotions, all of those things, right? So the starting point is where the contrast begins for you in your journey when it comes to experiencing and learning of lessons, right? There's a whole process in this circle of life. There's a whole process in the evolution of a soul where there is us starting at our starting point, moving into our experience, and then of course moving into the ending stage of it and judging that. And where we start is where we will finish. Where we start is where we will always end, right? Whether it's in ascension or descension. And I can explain that through experiences, right? So for example, when you think about a relationship that starts on a rocky foundation, the start was, even if the person had good intention because they're, naive, if the foundation was rocky, you'll always come back to that point where judgment will be made. And so there's a experience that you want that relationship will teach you, that when you come back full circle, it will all make sense. But it never makes sense as the journey is going, right? All we really have is the journey. The beginning and the end really isn't truly, is really just is never ending. So if you think about contrast on a spiritual level, or from a experience level, right? What one may want, is something that they experience by having the opposite of that. For example, there's a lot of people, like the whole relationship example. There's some people that might want unconditional love, and that might be their start set point, right? And the circle widens based on how long it takes for one to understand the experience and what it was worth and all the lessons in it, right? So the relationship can last 5, 10, 15 years. There may have been 2, 3, 4 kids out of the relationship, but it ends. Or there may be very short marriages, right? Or unions that bring forth the child every time, but never a fruitful relationship. So if the experience was, or if the learning or the desire from the start, right, was unconditional love, the contrast will give the person a series of experiences that will teach them and show them unconditional love in a way that they're not maybe expecting it or wanting it, right? Through the children. Sometimes relationships don't work out and they're horrible. And, you come back to the judgment phase or to the end of the cycle, right? You come full circle and you realize that what you come back to the starting point, and you come back transformed, but you always come back to where you start, based on the experiences, and for better or for worse, ascending or descending. Let's speak of an experience where there's descension from the experience. So if everything's moving in a circle, right, and we're always returning back to the original point of reference, the contrast is the experiences. By having the opposite of what you want, you learn to have what you want, or feel what you um or experience the feeling of what it is that you desire through having what you don't want, right? So ultimately the descension process of that is when one might have, a series of events. Let's say that the desire from the starting point was to have more, to gain more material wealth, right? And let's say, of course, there's many ways to have that, right? And the starting point may have been triggered from experience early childhood of lack, being poor, or having experiences in school where you didn't have what other people have, whatever. We all choose the lesson based on, an experience. So the starting point on a metaphysical level to the contrast that we are experiencing through this soul contract and experience might be of one of greed, or built on that faulty foundation, right? And may land you in a situation where, when it comes full circle, let's say you started off on a high note, there's always the rise and fall. There's always, and they say pride before the fall too, right? So it's very important to be humble in our experiences. Let's say that one finds their self in federal penitentiary because of the choices that they made, based on the desire, right? And the intentions may have been genuine from the start. They may have had a very successful and ethical business or operation that turned faulty or whatever. But they always end where they started. So that person has a choice to come to a realization that of what they wanted from the beginning, right? The contrast is having the total opposite of that, or having it to an extreme, which is the pride before the fall, right? So life can give it to you in so many ways. The contrast comes in many forms. Just it's very important to know whenever it's a feeling of lack or being on the opposite end, there will be a positive blessing out of it. Whereas if it starts on a high note, and a very prideful one, an egotistical one, unknowing, an immature or naive note, if it starts there, there might be a descension, as far as how the circle comes back or comes around, spirals up or down, right? And then a person may find themselves in prison, like, all for money. In the end of the day, like, what I wanted was to have more, or have whatever, not realizing the whole new set of experiences that what you really want is within you, or whatever that lesson in life may be. I hope that makes sense. I know sometimes the words I say, or sometimes explaining the concepts in my mind, can be a little bit challenging, but ultimately take what you want from this messenger. um yeah, moving forward, I really just want to empower people with knowledge based on actuality and based on wisdom, based on experiences. Like, everything that you're experiencing in life is for a purpose and for a reason. There's a starting point, and you will get the contrast of whatever it is that you desire. There's an opposite that you may be experiencing, or you may be experiencing fully what it is that you want. um and it matters how you start as how you finish. Like, that's something you always want to take into consideration. You start off with a bang, you're going to end with a bang. You start off humble, you end humble. So when you understand universal laws, you understand that there are soul contracts that we agree to before we even come here. So, and to get the lesson out of the experience based versus, right, allowing the experience to overthrow us emotionally, or take control of us emotionally, or to affect us to where we create this bitterness within ourselves and a series of events based on that. It's so important to take charge of our life and know that there are universal laws that exist that correspond to action and reaction. So it's so important to know where what we want is seeking us. What we're seeking, what we're seeking is seeking us. So be very mindful of how we project ourselves and go after the things that we want, because there will be judgment. Everything comes full circle, and where you start is where you'll finish. It's you'll always come back to that circle. Now, how you come back to it is based on how you evolved and learned the lessons and experienced it all, right? What you put out there, let's say that a person never had an apartment before, or never lived on their own before. They go out in the world, they get their own apartment. They live in their apartment. They have many experiences, the highs, the lows of ownership, right? Or responsibility, or paying their rent on time, things of that nature. And then they come back full circle when it's time to move into a new space. And let's say they learned all the lessons. They're ready to move forward with the lessons that they've learned and be a better tenant at the next space they rent out, right? So that experience comes full circle, and they end where they started, right? That same feeling of wanting and desiring a new space, but it's just transformed, right? So we see these reoccurring experiences based on if we learned the lesson or not. If we do, if we learned the lesson, we'll see the fruits of our labor. We'll see the experiences and cycles begin to change, right? We'll see that the experience begins to change. People sometimes get in a reoccurring wheel of experiences of descension, where if you're descending and you're not learning the lesson, there is no transmuting and transcending of that experience or that cycle. So it's so important to really just to be mindful and be in the moment, and to reflect a lot, to know that where you start is where you'll finish. I started this channel on metaphysics before I even was talking about astrology. And now I see when it comes through the cycles, I'm coming right back to that metaphysical talk. And that's something I'll always be coming back to. And it could happen on a micro level like this. And it can happen on a macro level where it is life or death, where it is your life in the palm of your hand. So it's just just important to understand this life in this realm and why we're here. It's so important to understand universal laws. We understand the law of polarity, right? There's always a polar opposite. We're always going to experience the opposite of what we want, so that we can truly appreciate that, or so that we can truly see that what we want might not be the best thing. where we start is where we'll finish. So we'll always get back to that judgment and that reflection. And when we get to that reflection moment, it's a make or break us moment. It will either make us move forward into our descension or our ascension, and transmuting and transcending into a new. Um, I think if you were to correlate it to experiences on astrological level, these metaphysical concepts play out, these universal laws play out within your houses, right? So what areas of life are have the most contact with planets? Where are the planets in your houses, and how are they affecting these areas of life? You'll see the reoccurring events, right? A person that has a flooded 8th house or a flooded 12th house, these have more introverted transformations on an internal level, spiritual level, or even on a world level, right? On a level bigger than yourself. Or it could be a 4th house experience, transformation of family and tradition and home. It could be a 5th house or 7th house type of transformation or cycles that always teach you certain things regarding family members, loved ones, romance, creativity, things of that nature. There might be a lot of first house experiences that will transform your personality. But remember, where you start is where you finish. Everything's a cycle in life, everything's a circle in life, and life is always but a dream. Okay, I hope this information was valuable to you. I take it as you want, and how it works for you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Universal Love Law. You got to keep them high vibes all day. Keep your vibration high. Work on yourself, okay? And I'll talk to you guys soon, okay?